The year is 257. Earth has spent the last century healing itself, rebuilding what was nearly lost during the climate wars of the late 21st century. Cities now rise in harmony with nature, their towers intertwined with living ecosystems. Humanity has reached for the stars, establishing colonies on Luna and Mars, but never truly expected what would come looking back. The Isolos, so named by human linguists for their crystalline xylophone-like communication patterns, arrived without warning. One moment the skies were empty. The next, their fleet hung in orbit like a constellation of obsidian daggers. Their ships, all sharp angles and impossible geometry, defied human understanding of physics and engineering. General Alyssa Ivanova stood on the command deck of the orbital defense platform Guardian, her reflection barely visible against the panoramic viewscreen showing the alien fleet. 67 years old, with silver hair cut in a severe military style and eyes that had witnessed too much conflict, she represented Earth's finest military mind. "They've been silent for 3 days," said Commander James O'Connell, his fingers dancing across holographic displays. "No communication attempts, no response to our hails. Just waiting." Ivanova's jaw tightened. Patience is a weapon when wielded correctly. "What do our scans show about their capabilities?" "Energy readings off the scale. Their ships appear to be powered by something we can't identify. Weapon systems are charged but not aimed. They're just there." The general turned from the viewport. "Have the evacuation protocols been initiated for the orbital colony?" "Complete. Only essential personnel remain. The Martian colony has gone dark as per your orders." "Good." Ivanova walked to the central holographic table, where a three-dimensional representation of Earth and its surroundings rotated slowly. "They came all this way for a reason. I want to know what that reason is." Far above Earth, in the command nexus of the SCI-FI flagship Harbinger, Commander Kozev observed the blue planet below with what passed for curiosity among its kind. The SCI-FI were not creatures of flesh but of crystalline structure. Their bodies formed from interlocking geometric shapes that shifted and reconfigured based on their emotional state. Kozev's form currently resembled a tall, slender spire of dark obsidian, with light pulsing through crystalline veins in rhythmic patterns. "The biological specimens are primitive but resilient," Kozev transmitted through the HiveMind network to its subordinates. "Their technology is crude, yet they've managed to establish off-world colonies. An unexpected development. The Ensilos had conquered 100 worlds before reaching Earth. Each victory had been swift, each species easily subjugated. They were the pinnacle of evolution, the universe's response to chaos, order incarnate, with a mission to bring all sentient life under their harmonious control. Their military is preparing for conflict," reported Sub-Commander Rathitz. "Its form a squat, triangular prism that vibrated with each transmission. They believe they can resist." Kozev's crystalline structure shifted, colors flowing from deep blue to amber. "They are Deathworlders, born on a planet that actively tries to kill them. This may explain their irrational confidence. The records indicate they've survived multiple extinction events of their own making." "Should we proceed with the standard subjugation protocol?" asked Rathith. "No," Kozev transmitted. "This species requires special handling. Deploy the initial wave. Target their military infrastructure first. Once their capacity to resist is broken, the rest will fall into line." As the Exilos fleet began to move, the first transmission from Earth finally reached them. A simple message in mathematical language, the universal medium of first contact. The message read, "We don't know why you're here, but we have a tradition on our world. When facing the unknown, we gather, we share food, and we try to understand. We extend this invitation to you." Kozev's form shifted to a deep crimson, indicating what humans might have called amusement. "They invite us to share food while we prepare to destroy them. How quaint." The response sent back to Earth was equally simple. "Your invitation is declined. Your world will be ours within your planet's rotation." In the suburbs of what was once Chicago, Dr. Eleanor Abrams watched the alien response on her home display, her hands trembling slightly. At 42, she was Earth's leading zenith linguist, though she'd never actually spoken to an alien until now. "They declined," she said to her husband, Michael, who was loading a shotgun in their living room. "And they've given us 24 hours. Typical," Michael grunted. checking the ammunition. All that power and no manners. Eleanor walked to the window, looking out at their neighborhood. Children were still playing in the streets, their parents trying to maintain normalcy. The government had advised against panic, but people were preparing nonetheless. "Do you really think that will help?" she asked, gesturing to the weapon. "Probably not," Michael admitted, breaking the shotgun open and checking the barrel. "But it makes me feel better. Besides, I'm not planning to let them take this house without a fight." Eleanor smiled sadly. "You and your barbecue." Michael's eyes lit up. "Speaking of which," he walked to their backyard, where a massive grill stood ready. "If we're going to face the end of the world, we might as well do it with full stomachs." Despite the looming alien threat, Michael had spent the morning preparing for their annual neighborhood barbecue, a tradition they'd maintained for 15 years. Now it seemed it might be their last. "You're impossible," Eleanor said, following him outside. "Am I?" Michael replied, lighting the grill. "Or am I just human? When faced with the end, we don't cower in corners. We gather, we eat, we celebrate what we have. It's how we've always survived." As the smell of grilling meat began to waft through the neighborhood, more neighbors emerged from their homes, drawn by the familiar scent. Soon people were gathering in the Abrams' backyard, sharing food and conversation, trying to ignore the alien ships that were now visible in the daytime sky. "They're coming," someone said, pointing upward. Indeed, the Silos fleet had begun its descent, ships breaking formation and heading toward strategic targets across the globe. General Ivanova watched the deployment from the command deck of the Guardian. "They're targeting our military installations first." "Smart. Can we stop them?" asked Commander O'Connell. "Not all of them," Ivanova admitted. "But we can make them bleed for every inch of ground they take." She activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All units, this is General Ivanova. The enemy is upon us. They may have superior technology, but we have something they don't. Something they can never understand. We have home field advantage. We have centuries of fighting against impossible odds. We have each other. Make them regret ever coming to Earth." As her words echoed through the defense network, the first Silos ships entered Earth's atmosphere, their dark forms silhouetted against the blue sky. In the Abrams' backyard, the neighbors watched as one of the ships descended toward what they knew was the nearby military base. "Should we take shelter?" asked the young mother, clutching her child close. Michael looked at Eleanor, who shook her head almost imperceptibly. "No," Michael said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We stay right here. We finish our barbecue. We show them that even in the face of extinction, we don't stop being human." The ship fired as it passed over the base, a beam of energy that left a smoking crater where the installation had been moments before. The shockwave rattled windows for miles around. In the Axelos command nexus, Kuzeth observed the destruction with satisfaction. "Their military installations are neutralized. Begin Phase 2. As the odds allies' ships fanned out across the globe, targeting cities and infrastructure, they encountered unexpected resistance. Human fighters, though technologically inferior, fought with a ferocity that surprised the invaders. Ground forces emerged from hidden bunkers, armed with weapons that could at times penetrate Zalai's shields. "The biologicals are fighting back," Breath transmitted with what the Silos equivalent of alarm. "Their resistance is inefficient but effective." "They cannot win," Kazeth responded. "Continue the operation." But as the day wore on, the Axalos began to realize that conquering Earth would not be as simple as they had anticipated. Humans, it turned out, were exceptionally good at war, having practiced it against each other for millennia. In the Abrams' backyard, the barbecue continued despite the distant sounds of battle. More neighbors had joined them, drawn by the strange juxtaposition of celebration and destruction. "This is crazy," someone said, passing a plate of ribs to a stranger. "We should be hiding." "Where would we hide?" Eleanor asked. "They can see us from orbit. We're all in this together, whether we like it or not." As if to emphasize her point, a Silos ship passed overhead, its shadow falling across the gathering. For a moment everyone froze, expecting destruction. Instead, the ship continued on its path, ignoring the small gathering of humans. "They don't care about us," Michael realized. "We're too small a target." "Or they're saving us for later," Eleanor countered grimly. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the neighborhood. The sounds of battle had grown more distant as human forces fell back to regroup. "We've lost contact with half our military installations," Commander O'Connell reported to General Ivanova. "Casualties are significant, but we've made them pay," Ivanova replied, studying the tactical display. "How many of their ships have we taken down?" 17 confirmed kills. Another 33 damaged but still operational. Ivanova nodded slowly. "Not bad for primitives. What's their next likely move?" "Ground invasion. They'll want to secure the planet physically. Then let's give them a warm welcome," Ivanova said, her eyes cold. "Deploy the reserves. Activate the urban defense protocols. It's time to show them what happens when you poke a Death Worlder." As night fell over Earth, the SCI-FI began their ground invasion, deploying troops in major cities across the globe. The crystalline soldiers moved with eerie precision, their forms shifting and adapting to the urban landscape. In Chicago, the Abrams and their neighbors watched as IDLOS troops entered their neighborhood, moving with purpose toward the city center. "They're ignoring us again," Michael noted, passing around more food. "It's like we're not even here." "That's because we're not," Eleanor realized. "To them, we're just background. They're after the infrastructure, the resources, the control points. They don't care about individual humans." "Then that's our advantage," Michael said, standing up. "They don't see us as a threat." He walked to the edge of the yard where a Xylos patrol was passing. The crystalline soldiers didn't even glance his way. "Hey!" Michael shouted. "You want this planet? You're going to have to work for it." The Xylos patrol stopped, their forms shifting toward what humans would interpret as confusion. "You speak to us," one of them transmitted, its voice a series of crystalline chimes that somehow formed words in human minds. "I do," Michael replied. "And I'm telling you, you've made a mistake. We might not have your fancy technology, but we have something you'll never understand." The Xylos soldier tilted its geometric form. "And what is that?" Michael grinned. "Spirit. Now get off my lawn before I get really angry." The Xylos patrol seemed to consider this for a moment, then continued on its way, dismissing the human as irrelevant. As night deepened, the human resistance regrouped, preparing for the next phase of the invasion. In neighborhoods across the planet, people began to emerge from their homes, gathering in small groups, sharing what they had, preparing for whatever came next. In the Xylos command nexus, Kazeth reviewed the day's progress. "We control 70% of their military infrastructure," Pava reported. "Ground resistance is scattered but persistent. The biologicals continue to fight despite certain defeat." "They are irrational," Kazeth transmitted. "Their behavior defies logic. Why do they continue to resist when surrender would preserve their lives?" Rithus' form shifted in what might have been a shrug. "They are Death Worlders. Perhaps irrationality is their natural state. Then we will need to adjust our strategy," Jeff decided. "Tomorrow we will demonstrate the futility of their resistance. We will select a population center and eliminate it entirely. Perhaps that will break their spirit." As the Xylos fleet prepared for the next day's assault, humans across Earth did something unexpected. They didn't hide or cower or prepare for the end. Instead, they gathered. They shared food. They told stories. They sang songs. They celebrated their humanity in the face of extinction. In the Abrams' backyard, the barbecue had grown into a block party, then a neighborhood gathering, then something more. People from miles around had joined them, bringing food, music, and stories. "This is how we win," Eleanor told Michael as they watched the gathering grow. "Not by fighting them on their terms, but by being unapologetically human." Michael smiled, putting his arm around her. "They think they can break our spirit by destroying our cities. They don't understand that our spirit isn't in our buildings. It's in here." He tapped his chest. "And in gatherings like this." As the first Xylos ships began to rise from the cities preparing for the next day's assault, the humans below continued their celebrations, their voices rising in song and laughter, a sound that echoed across the planet, a defiant chorus in the face of oblivion. The Xylos had predicted a swift victory, but they had failed to account for the most unpredictable variable of all, the human spirit, which burned brightest when faced with the darkest of nights. As dawn broke over the ravaged landscape of Earth, the true nature of the conflict began to reveal itself. The Asilos had expected a straightforward conquest, overwhelming technological superiority against primitive resistance. What they had encountered instead was something their logical minds could not comprehend. A species that refused to be conquered, not through military might but through sheer stubbornness. In the command nexus of the Harbinger, Kazeth reviewed the overnight reports with growing what passed for frustration among its kind. The biologicals have not dispersed as expected, Rith transmitted. Instead, they formed larger gatherings. Our sensors indicate increased activity in residential areas, but not the panic or flight patterns we anticipated. What kind of activity? Kazeth asked, its crystalline form shifting toward a deeper blue, difficult to categorize. They appear to be celebrating, singing, sharing food, engaging in social rituals. It's irrational behavior given their circumstance. Kazeth considered this information. They believe they can win through morale, that their spirit alone can overcome our technological superiority, or they simply don't understand the severity of their situation, Reth suggested. Their primitive brains may be incapable of processing the reality of their impending subjugation. Then we will make them understand, Kazeth decided. Select a major population center, one of their so-called cities. We will erase it from existence. Perhaps that will demonstrate the futility of their resistance. As the Ilos fleet moved to carry out this directive, General Ivanova watched from the command deck of the Guardian, her expression grim. They're targeting Seattle, Commander O'Connell reported. All ships in that sector are converging on the city. Can we stop them? Ivanova asked. Not with conventional weapons, O'Connell admitted. But we might be able to disrupt their formation with the electromagnetic pulse generators. It would be a suicide mission for any pilots involved, but it might buy time. Ivanova was silent for a moment, weighing the options. How many casualties are we looking at if Seattle is destroyed? Millions, O'Connell said softly, plus the loss of infrastructure, resources, and morale. Ivanova finished. That's what they're really after. They want to break our spirit. She activated the fleet communication system. All pilots, this is General Ivanova. I need volunteers for a critical mission. High probability of no return, but success could save millions of lives. This is not an order. This is a request for those willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. Within minutes, responses began flooding in. Not just from military pilots, but from civilian volunteers as well. Transport pilots, shuttle drivers, even orbital construction workers who had never seen combat. They're all willing to die, O'Connell noted with awe. For people they've never met. That's humanity, Ivanova replied, a rare smile touching her lips. At our best and our worst. In Seattle, the situation was surprisingly calm. Despite the approaching alien fleet, people weren't fleeing in panic. Instead, they were gathering in public spaces, parks, plazas, streets, sharing food, playing music, and facing their potential end with a strange kind of celebration. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, a physicist who had been studying the Axilos technology since their arrival, watched from his apartment window as the alien ships grew closer. They're going to destroy the city, he said to his neighbor, Maria, who had come to check on him. Then let's make sure they remember it, Maria replied, handing him a plate of food from the neighborhood gathering downstairs. Come on. The band is about to play. Kenji hesitated, then followed Maria downstairs where hundreds of people had gathered in the apartment complex courtyard. A local band was setting up on a makeshift stage, children were drawing chalk art on the sidewalks, and people were sharing stories and laughter. This is how we fight back, Kenji realized. Not with weapons, but with life itself. As the Axilos ships positioned themselves over the city, their weapon systems charging, the volunteers General Ivanova had called for began their approach. A small fleet of mismatched craft military fighters, transport shuttles, and civilian vessels flew directly toward the alien formation, their electromagnetic pulse generators armed and ready. They're coming, Reth transmitted to Kazeth. The biologicals are attempting to intercept us with primitive craft. Insignificant, Kazeth responded. Proceed with the operation. But as the human fleet drew closer, the Axilos began to realize something was wrong. The ships weren't attacking, they were on a collision course. They're on suicide runs. Reth realized. They mean to sacrifice themselves to disrupt our formation. Evade them, Kazeth ordered. Continue the operation, but it was too late. The first human ship, an old transport shuttle piloted by a 62-year-old grandmother who had flown cargo routes for 30 years, slammed directly into the Silos destroyer. The electromagnetic pulse erupted, temporarily disabling the ship's systems and causing it to drift off course. One by one, the volunteer ships found their targets, each pilot making the ultimate sacrifice to save the city below. The Silos formation, designed for precision and order, fell into chaos as ship after ship was disabled or forced to evade. In the command nexus, Kazeth watched with disbelief as the carefully planned operation descended into disarray. Their sacrifice is illogical, Kazeth transmitted. They gain nothing by this action. They gain time, Rith realized. And they preserve the lives of millions of their own kind. Their irrational behavior has once again disrupted our logical approach. Recall the fleet, Kazeth ordered reluctantly. We will reassess our strategy. As the Axelos ships withdrew from Seattle, the city erupted in celebration. The volunteer pilots were gone, but their sacrifice had saved millions. In neighborhoods across the city, people gathered to honor the fallen, their celebrations tempered with grief, but also with renewed determination. In the courtyard of Kenji's apartment complex, the band struck up a new song, one they had just composed about the brave pilots who had given their lives for the city. They think we're primitives, Kenji said to Maria, his voice thick with emotion. They think our technology is inferior, our strategies unsophisticated. They don't understand that our greatest strength isn't in our machines or our weapons. It's in our willingness to sacrifice for each other. Maria nodded, wiping away a tear. They came here expecting to conquer a planet. Instead, they've awakened a species that will not be conquered. As news of Seattle's salvation spread across the globe, a new kind of resistance began to form, not just military, but cultural. Humans began to actively celebrate their humanity in the face of the alien threat gathering in larger numbers, sharing more openly and creating art, music, and literature that defied the Asila's attempts at subjugation. In the Exelos command nexus, Kazeth reviewed the day's events with what passed for consternation. Their resistance is growing stronger, Arith reported. Our initial assessment was incorrect. They are not primitives. They are something else, Deathworlders. Kazeth transmitted. Born on a planet that constantly tries to kill them. Evolved through adversity. Adapted to survive against impossible odds. We have made a grave miscalculation. What is our next move? Reth asked. Kazeth was silent for a long moment, its crystalline form shifting through a spectrum of colors as it processed the new information. We cannot defeat them through conventional means, Kazeth finally transmitted. Their spirit is their strength. Therefore, we must find a way to break it. How? Kazeth's form settled on a deep, ominous red. We will give them what they want. We will engage them on their terms. We will fight them not as conquerors but as survivors. We will adapt to their methods, however irrational they may seem. As the Asilos fleet began to reconfigure itself for a new kind of war, humans across Earth continued their celebrations, unaware that their greatest challenge was yet to come. The Asilos had predicted a swift victory, but they were learning a valuable lesson. When you poke a Deathworlder, you'd better be prepared for what wakes up. The war for Earth was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since the Axelamus arrival, and Earth had become a planet divided. In some regions, the invaders had established control, their crystalline structures rising from conquered cities like geometric tumors. In others, human resistance held strong, fortified by the unexpected victories in Seattle and other population centers. General Ivanova stood before a holographic map of Earth, red markers indicating Zidlos-controlled territories, blue for human-held regions. The patchwork of control was like a bizarre game of territorial conquest, with neither side able to gain a decisive advantage. They're adapting, Commander O'Connell reported, his expression grim. Their tactics have changed. They're no longer relying solely on technological superiority. They're learning to fight like us. Ivanova nodded slowly. They're Deathworlders too in their own way. They've conquered 100 worlds. They know how to adapt. The problem is, they're adapting faster than we can counter, O'Connell continued. Their ground troops have developed countermeasures to our most effective weapons. Their ships are now deploying in patterns that minimize vulnerability to electromagnetic attacks. We need something new, Ivanova mused. Something they can't anticipate. In a hidden research facility beneath the ruins of what was once Denver, Dr. Eleanor Abrams worked alongside a team of scientists from around the world, all of whom had managed to escape Xylos-controlled territories. Their mission: understand the Xylos technology and find a weakness. Their crystalline structure is both their strength and their vulnerability, Eleanor explained to her colleagues, pointing to a three-dimensional model of a Xylos soldier. It allows them to adapt and reconfigure, but it also means they're susceptible to certain frequencies. Dr. Kenji Tanaka, who had managed to escape Seattle after the battle, nodded in agreement. We've detected resonant frequencies that can disrupt their structural integrity. The problem is, we need to get close enough to deliver them. And even then they can adapt, added Dr. Amaro Konkwo, a materials scientist who had fled Nigeria after the Xylos invasion. Their ability to reconfigure means any weapon we develop might only work once. Then we need to develop a range of weapons, Eleanor decided. A symphony of destruction, if you will. Something that keeps them off balance, unable to adapt quickly enough. As the scientist worked frantically to develop new weapons and strategies, the war continued to rage across the planet. In Xylos-controlled territories, a strange kind of society was beginning to form. One where humans were allowed to live but under strict Xylos oversight. In what was once London, now renamed Xylos Prime, Commander Reth observed the human population with what passed for curiosity. The Xylos had established a system of governance that allowed humans to maintain certain aspects of their culture, so long as it didn't interfere with Xylos control. Their adaptability is remarkable, Reth had transmitted to Kazeth, who was overseeing the transformation of Earth from the Harbinger. They've already begun to integrate our technology into their daily lives. Some even seem to prefer our methods of organization. Control through cooperation is more efficient than control through force, Maxeth responded. Have there been any resistance activities? Minimal, Reth reported. The occasional sabotage, but nothing significant. The humans appear to have accepted our rule. But even as Ratheth transmitted this report in the shadows of Xylos Prime, a resistance movement was growing. Led by a former history teacher named David Chen, these rebels worked to undermine Xylos control from within, using the invaders' own technology against them. They think they've won, Chen told his small group of followers, meeting in the abandoned underground tunnels beneath the city. They think we've accepted their rule. But they don't understand that submission is just another form of resistance. One of the rebels, a young woman named Maya, who had once been a software engineer, held up a modified Xylos communication device. I've found a way to tap into their network. We can monitor their communications, maybe even insert false data. Chen nodded thoughtfully. Information is a weapon. If we can make them doubt what they know, we can create opportunities. As the resistance in Xylos Prime grew bolder, similar movements were forming in other Xylos-controlled territories. Humans were learning to live under alien rule while secretly working to undermine it, their adaptability proving to be a formidable weapon against the rigid logic of their conquerors. In the human-held territories, life had taken on a strange wartime normalcy. Neighborhoods had organized into self-sufficient units, with community gardens, shared resources, and local defense forces. The barbecue that had started in Michael Abrams' backyard had evolved into a network of community gatherings that served both social and strategic purposes. We're not just surviving, Michael told Eleanor during one of her rare visits home. We're thriving. People are coming together in ways I've never seen before. Eleanor smiled, though her eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. The research is progressing, but the Xylos are adapting faster than we can develop countermeasures. We need something game-changing. Maybe you're looking at it the wrong way, Michael suggested. You're trying to beat them at their own game, technology against technology. What if we need to beat them at ours? What do you mean? Michael gestured to the neighborhood gathering, where people were sharing food, music, and stories. This, community, connection, the things that make us human. They can't replicate it, no matter how advanced their technology is. Eleanor considered this, a new idea beginning to form. You might be onto something. The Xylos are logical, systematic. They operate according to predictable patterns. What if we introduce chaos into their system? Chaos? Michael asked. How? By being unpredictably human, Eleanor replied, her mind already racing with possibilities. Back in the research facility, Eleanor presented her new theory to the scientific team. The Azylos operate on logic and predictability, she explained. Their entire civilization is built on order and efficiency. But humans, we're messy, we're emotional, we're irrational, and that might be our greatest weapon. Dr. Tanaka frowned. How do we weaponize irrationality? By embracing it, Eleanor responded. By doing things they can't predict or understand. By using our very humanity as a weapon against their cold logic. The team began developing a new strategy, one based not on technological superiority but on human unpredictability. They designed weapons that appeared primitive but incorporated advanced technology, communication systems that mimicked human social networks, and tactics that defied logical military doctrine. Meanwhile, in the Asylos Command Nexus, Kazeth reviewed reports from the territories with growing concern. The humans are adapting, Wrath transmitted. Their resistance is becoming more organized, more effective. They're using our own technology against us. They are Deathworlders, Kazeth reminded its subordinate. Adaptability is their evolutionary advantage. We must adapt as well. How? Wrath asked. Their methods are illogical. Their strategies make no sense. How can we counter what we cannot predict? Kazeth's crystalline form shifted through a spectrum of colors. As it considered this dilemma, we cannot predict their actions. So we must create scenarios where their unpredictability becomes a disadvantage. The Exylos began developing new strategies of their own, ones designed to exploit human emotional responses, to manipulate their tendency toward irrational behavior, to turn their greatest strength into a vulnerability. The war on Earth was evolving into something neither side had anticipated. A battle not just of technology and tactics, but of fundamentally different ways of thinking. The Pyzlos, with their logic and order against humans with their emotion and chaos. In a small town in what was once rural France, a group of human soldiers prepared for a mission that embodied this new approach to warfare. Their weapons looked primitive, rifles that appeared to be from the early 21st century, simple explosives, even bows and arrows, but each incorporated advanced technology designed to disrupt Exylos systems. The key is to make them underestimate us, their commander, a former Special Forces operative named Jacques Dubois, explained. They see primitive weapons, they assume primitive tactics, but we're going to hit them with something they can't anticipate. As the team moved out, their movements appeared disorganized, almost chaotic. They communicated through what sounded like casual conversation, their references to family, food, and popular culture masking strategic information. They're approaching, Wrath transmitted to Kazeth, observing the human team through Zeklos sensors. Their weapons are primitive. Their formation is disorganized. This should be an easy victory, but as the Axelis troops moved to intercept, they found themselves facing an unexpected attack. The human weapons, despite their primitive appearance, delivered devastating blows to the crystalline soldiers. The chaotic formation suddenly resolved into a coordinated assault. The casual conversation revealed as coded instructions, and what appeared to be a disorganized retreat turned into a devastating ambush. They've tricked us, Rathik transmitted in what passed for alarm. Their primitive appearance was a deception. Their unpredictability is their weapon, Kazeth realized. They use our logical assumptions against us. As the human team completed their mission destroying a Cydalos communication hub, they vanished back into the countryside, leaving behind confused and damaged Cydalos troops. In the Silos Prime, David Chen's resistance group received word of the successful mission through their underground network. It worked, Maya reported, her excitement barely contained. The new tactics are effective. Chen nodded thoughtfully. The Exylos are logical. They expect us to act in predictable ways. But if we embrace our unpredictability, if we use our very humanity as a weapon, we can keep them off balance. The resistance began planning their next operation, one that would take advantage of Xylos' assumptions about human behavior. They would stage a celebration, a large public gathering that appeared to be a cultural event but would actually serve as cover for a major sabotage operation. In the human-held territories, similar operations were being planned. The community gatherings that had become a hallmark of human resistance were evolving into something more coordinated efforts that appeared spontaneous, strategic operations disguised as social events. Eleanor and Michael Abrams stood in their backyard, watching as their neighborhood prepared for what appeared to be another community barbecue. "It's amazing," Michael said. "Even in the middle of a war, people find reasons to celebrate." "That's not just a celebration," Eleanor replied quietly. "It's a military operation. Every person there has a role. Every conversation has a purpose. We're turning our very humanity into a weapon." Michael looked at her with concern. "Is that what we're becoming? Weapons?" Eleanor shook her head. "No, we're becoming survivors. We're using what makes us human, our ability to connect, to celebrate, to care for each other as a way to survive." There's a difference. As the sun began to set, the neighborhood gathering grew larger. People arriving from miles around, to the silos, sensors observing from orbit. It would appear to be exactly what it looked like. A human social gathering, inefficient and irrelevant from a military perspective. But hidden within the celebration were teams of saboteurs preparing to move out under cover of darkness. Hidden in the food and supplies were components for weapons and communication devices. Woven into the music and conversation were coded messages, coordinating a planet-wide resistance operation. The Exilog had predicted a swift victory, but they were learning that humans were not the primitives they had assumed. They were adaptable, resilient, and unpredictably creative in their approach to warfare. As night fell over Earth, the real battle was just beginning. A battle not just for territory but for the very soul of the planet. A clash between logic and emotion, order and chaos. Two fundamentally different approaches to life and survival. And in this battle, humanity's greatest weakness, its irrationality, its emotionality, its messiness, might just prove to be its greatest strength. The operation began at midnight, coordinated across multiple time zones and territories. What had appeared to be isolated community gatherings were, in fact, the staging grounds for a planet-wide assault on Silos infrastructure. In Silos Prime, David Chen's resistance group moved through the city's maintenance tunnels. Their target, the central communication hub that connected Earth to the Silos fleet. The celebration in the city square above served as perfect cover, the music and revelry masking their movements. "Almost there," Maya transmitted through a modified Silos communication device, her voice barely a whisper. "Security is light. They're focused on the celebration. They see humans gathering. They assume it's inefficient behavior." Chen replied, checking the modified explosive charges they carried. "They don't understand that our social gatherings are often the most efficient way to organize." As they reached the communication hub, the team moved with practiced precision, placing charges at key structural points. The explosives were crude by Zelos standards, little more than modified mining explosives, but they were designed to create a specific kind of chaos, one that would disrupt the crystalline structure of the Zelos technology. "Charges set," one of the team members reported. "Ready to detonate on your command." Chen nodded, checking the timer. "We synchronize with the other teams. 5 minutes." In the human-held territories, similar operations were underway. Jacques Dubois' team targeted a Silos power station, their primitive-looking weapons delivering precise strikes against the crystalline infrastructure. In what was once Tokyo, a resistance group sabotaged a Silos manufacturing facility, using traditional martial arts techniques combined with advanced technology to overcome the alien defenders. Across the planet, the assault unfolded, a coordinated chaos that defied Silos' predictions and expectations. The attacks were not just military operations, but performances, designed to exploit Silos' assumptions about human behavior. In the command nexus of the Harbinger, Kazeth watched the unfolding chaos with what passed for disbelief. Multiple attacks across the planet. Wrath transmitted, its crystalline form shifting rapidly through colors. They're coordinated but appear random. Their methods are primitive but effective. They're using our own logic against us, Kazeth realized. We expect them to attack military targets, so they target infrastructure. We expect them to use advanced technology, so they use primitive weapons. We expect them to be predictable, so they embrace chaos. Their unpredictability is their strength, Wrath transmitted. How do we counter what we cannot predict? Kazeth was silent for a long moment, its crystalline form processing the new reality of the conflict. We cannot predict their actions, so we must create scenarios where their unpredictability becomes a disadvantage. How? Wrath asked. By understanding their motivation, Kazeth responded. Their unpredictability stems from their emotional responses. If we can manipulate those emotions, we can guide their actions. As the Asilos began to develop new strategies based on this understanding, the human resistance continued its assault, striking at targets across the planet with what appeared to be random efficiency. In Xylos Prime, Chen's team prepared to detonate their charges. 30 seconds, Maya transmitted, her voice steady despite the tension. Above them, the celebration in the city square reached its peak. Music and laughter echoing through the night. The Xylos guards, observing the gathering, dismissed it as another example of inefficient human behavior, socializing when they should be preparing for the inevitable Xylos victory. 10 seconds, Chen counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2. The explosions erupted simultaneously across the planet, not just in Siglos Prime but in dozens of locations. The communication hub in Siglos Prime collapsed into a pile of crystalline rubble. Its connection to the fleet power stations flickered and died. Manufacturing facilities crumbled and transportation hubs ground to a halt. In the command nexus of the Harbinger, alarms blared as reports of the coordinated assault flooded in. We've lost communication with ground forces in multiple territories, Reth transmitted with urgency. Power grids are failing across the planet. Manufacturing capabilities have been reduced by 40%. Their unpredictability has become their greatest weapon. Kaveth realized, they've used our assumptions against us. As the Xylos struggled to respond to the coordinated chaos, humans across the planet emerged from their hiding places, celebrating what appeared to be a major victory. In the human-held territories, people gathered in the streets, sharing